Newsflash! Wrestling is a work. We don't call it fake because that's not true, but for a good while now we have all known the deal. Doesn't mean we can't suspend our disbelief from time to time, and really that's the challenge most promotions face these days. How do you pull the wool over a fan's eyes when they already know the secrets? You have to think outside the box, or just accept that things are never gonna be the same. That logic doesn't apply to the performers themselves, however. If you've been booked in an angle or have a certain story going on, you better be smart with it when you're living your ordinary life. Otherwise, you could get Rusev and Larned. In the midst of them feuding on TV, they announced that their real-life counterparts were getting married. That annoyed WWE so much they cancelled their entire narrative and glared at both of them disappointingly. Wasn't the first time. I'm Simon from WhatCulture, please do subscribe, and this is 10 wrestlers who were punished for breaking kayfabe. Number 10, Koji Kitao. Once a sumo wrestler, Koji Kitao made the jump across to wrestling with a lot of success. He joined Genichiro Tenryu's Super World of Sports promotion, and those two even found their way to WWE before long. They defeated Demolition at WrestleMania 7. That solidified a relationship between the two companies, which saw John Earthquake Tenta get sent across to SWS, and it was this collision that almost ended Kitao's career. For some reason, Koji decided he wasn't going to wrestle Tenta, and instead was going to try and beat him up. As you can imagine, this broke down very quickly with some real blows being thrown, until Kitao just bailed from the ring and grabbed the microphone. He straight up told the audience that wrestling was fake, and if a real scrap was going down, there's no way he would lose. Alright then. I assume Koji had been told he wasn't going to get the victory and wasn't best pleased about it, so this was his revenge. Eventually a bunch of other wrestlers were sent to the ring to stop him, and Kitao was pretty much fired as soon as he got back behind the curtain. Because of course he was. Number 9, Shawn Michaels. As most of us know, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart hated each other in the late 90s. While this raged backstage, the two were also feuding in front of the cameras, so it did make for some seriously intense segments. We talked about blurring the lines, and this achieved that almost with ease. The reason for that, though, is because they kept breaking kayfabe on TV. For example, during a Raw in 1997, Michaels went completely off script and commented that Bret had been having a lot of sunny days recently. That may have gone over some people's heads, but those in the know were well aware it was HBK essentially saying that the hitman who was married had been having an affair with Sunny. As you can imagine, Bret wasn't happy about that, and a few weeks later this boiled over into a backstage fight. During that, it's said that Hart pulled a chunk of hair from Shawn's head. It riled up Michaels something fierce, and he left the company for a while. As far as we know, he was never formally punished, but the whole thing did not work in his favour. Officials weren't pleased with him. When you're hearing all this and seeing it play out on a show, though, it was hard not to scratch your head and think that maybe something else was going on. Number 8, Matt Hardy. After a feud with Kane in 2004, Matt Hardy had decided to take some time off to sort out a troublesome knee. It was rather serious as it kept him out till 2005, and during that period fans noticed that one day Hardy took down all the photos of him and then girlfriend Lita from his website. Matt responded at first to people saying if they wanted answers they should ask Amy Dumas, but that was before his emotions got the better of him. From nowhere he revealed all the details, which mainly focused on the fact their relationship had ended because she'd been having an affair with fellow WWE superstar and friend of Matt's, Edge. It was quite the revelation, and not too unlike something you'd see on Raw, but the next twist nobody saw coming. In April of that year, Hardy was fired from WWE. It seemed as if he'd been let go because of these revelations, and fans knew it. They voiced their disapproval at offense by chanting Hardy's name to the point WWE couldn't ignore it anymore. They hired Matt back in July before setting off on a very disappointing feud between the two. Hardy should have got the better of Edge, but that never happened, and we still don't really know why. Guess he was getting punished. Number 7, Serena. One of CM Punk's Straight Edge Society members, Serena Deeb went all out for the role. She shaved her head and on TV at least promised to live a clean and straightforward life. What she didn't know was that WWE expected her to carry that on away from the cameras, or at least that's how it seemed. In August 2010, Serena was suddenly let go from the company, and the rumour was it was due to not living this kind of life in the real world. I understand wanting to keep up the curtain a little, but this did seem a little bit crazy. It would be like firing Rikishi for not showing his ass all the time. This seemed to play out in front of the fans too, because a month before she was let go, WWE ran an angle where the group found Serena in a bar not living up to her vow. The temptations of life had seemingly got the better of her. Punk went off on one, which did make for a good angle, but given she was out the door 4 weeks later, there was definitely something to it. The lesson is to always make sure you know what you can and can't get away with in your regular life. Number 6, Paul London. The June 11th, 2000 episode of Raw played host to Vince McMahon Appreciation Night. It was meant to paint the chairman of the board as an asshole, which is why most of the clips featuring wrestlers were them saying exactly that. Screw the boss. It affected Vince too, as when we saw him walking to a limo at the end of the show and receiving no love from his roster, he had a sad look etched on his face. Little did he know it was about to get a whole lot worse. As soon as he stepped into the vehicle, it exploded, and it was heavily implied that McMahon had been killed, maybe even murdered. That was swiftly dropped after the Benoit tragedy a couple of weeks later, but there was still plenty of fallout because of it, namely with Paul London. During McMahon's walk of shame, London would smile at the boss, an act that Vince didn't like at all. In fact, he felt like it had ruined the whole segment. It saw Paul's push come to an end, and then following a year after doing nothing, he was fired. In later interviews, London said no one had any idea what the story was and that they should just look at McMahon and react accordingly. While Paul never said it was the reason his WWE career came to an end, he did admit he'd been confronted about it numerous times. So it doesn't take a genius now, does it? Number 5, William Regal. Few wrestlers are as awesome as William Regal. When you go through his career, you quickly realise that he could do everything and that really he should have gotten a bigger push. One of the reasons he didn't was because in his early career, things didn't really go to plan in the sense of drug addiction hampered his performance. It led to management being quite weary of him, and while Regal himself has utterly owned that and turned himself into quite the inspiration of how to move past your low moments, it still happened. Even still, William was able to have a hell of a run both in WWE and WCW. This is why when Goldberg was on his way to superstardom in early 1998, he came up against the Brit. If anyone could make Bill look good, it would be Regal, but then it went off the rails. While Goldberg had been smashing people in less than 2 minutes, here the whole thing went about 6 and it was wildly different to what we were used to. Some fans claimed that William was working stiff with the rookie, and although Goldberg still won clean, Regal was let go soon afterwards. The rumour was that it was a result of a lack of cooperation during this encounter, even though Regal said management had told him to have a competitive match with the undefeated one. Seems weird that the real man's man would ever go into business for himself, so who knows what actually happened here. I mean, at one time he played up an angle where someone peed into his tea. I guess we'll never know. Number 4, Daniel Puder. When Tough Enough wasn't reviewed for a 4th season, the competition became part of SmackDown. That was quite a resourceful move by WWE, but what was once a decent reality show soon became a series of bizarre skits involving wrestlers. There didn't seem to be much of a script, so every time these segments came around, it was like stepping into a different universe. When we got to the show's November 4th, 2004 episode, the contestants had to participate in a squat thrust contest, with the winner being allowed to have a shoot wrestling match with Kurt Angle. That sounds like winning an ice cream with shards of glass in it, but whatever. After it was said and done, Angle issued a challenge to these noobs, and it was one Daniel Puder who accepted. The two tussled for a little bit before Kurt took him down, but given that Puder had some MMA training, he saw the opportunity to lock in a Kimura on the Olympic gold medalist, and he took it. It would have broken Kurt's arm if the ref hadn't thought on his feet and just counted Daniel's shoulders to the mat, but all of this resulted in Puder becoming the most hated man in the locker room. This wasn't meant to be how it went down, and therefore he was in trouble. Puder would go on to win Tough Enough, but his only WWE appearance came in the 2005 Royal Rumble, where Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and Hardcore Holly beat him up. After the guaranteed first year of his contract ended, WWE offered him a standard developmental deal, so he left the company. And I think we've learned a lot from all of this. Number 3 and number 2, the Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Going back to what we were talking about at the start of this video, do not forget that at one point in time, Kayfabe was a very real thing. Fans truly believed that wrestlers hated each other and fought to try and win titles. That started to change when Vince McMahon took over the WWE from his father, but that didn't mean he wasn't interested in protecting the business as much as possible. An incident in 1987 proved just that. Following a WWE event in May of that year, the Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan were pulled over by police officers in New Jersey for driving erratically. Duggan, it was determined, was under the influence of marijuana, while the Sheik had been using cocaine. The two were arrested, and when the story broke, fans were absolutely shocked to see that patriotic Duggan had been travelling with the USA-hating Sheik. It saw them both leave the company, and that wasn't because of the drug-related charges. It was down to the fact they'd revealed too much and destroyed Kayfabe. It did do that as well. Filmmaker Chris Bale of Bigger, Stronger, Faster fame cites this arrest as the moment he learned wrestling was scripted. Like when your dad sits you down and tells you that Father Christmas may not be all he seems to. Number 1, Triple H. A story that will always do the rounds just because of what Triple H has gone on to do. Back in the mid-90s, the game wasn't as protected as he is today. One part of the backstage group known as The Clique, that also featured Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, it all went bad during a Madison Square Garden house show on May 19, 1996. Triple H was wrestling Hall while Michaels was wrestling Nash in separate matches, and all of this was happening just before Hall and Nash were about to jump ship to WCW. As some kind of goodbye because of this, when all was said and done, the four men got in the ring and hugged, even though they were meant to hate each other. McMahon was angry about it, but he couldn't punish two dudes that were leaving, and Michaels was the WWE champion, so he got a free pass too. That meant he had to take his frustrations out on Hunter, who soon found his push coming to an end. Before long, he was involved in hog pen matches with Henry Godwin. To his credit, Triple H weathered his punishment and soon achieved the success that he yearned. With trips out of the picture in the summer of 1996 too, McMahon was forced to let someone called Stone Cold Steve Austin win the King of the Ring instead. So maybe in hindsight, this was the greatest thing that has ever happened. Know of any other wrestlers who are punished for breaking kayfabe? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Then head over to WhatCulture.com and read yourself some articles, and follow WhatCulture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. My name is Simon from WhatCulture, and I will talk to you again soon.